The first light of dawn spilled across the stone ramparts of Riverrun, gilding the turbulent tumblestone in rose gold and rippling fire along the water's skit. In the quiet, just before the keep awoke, Robb Stark stood alone on the battlements, the weight of a nascent kingdom pressed upon his shoulders like a mailed fist. He had slept scarcely an hour, roused again and again by the demands of ravens, maesters, and bannermen eager for orders or absolution. The North looked to him for victory. The Riverlands bled beneath Lannister swords. His sisters remained captive in King's Landing. And yet, as he breathed the chill river mist and watched the horizon blush, Robb felt, for the first time since his father's death, a fragile ember of hope thrive in his chest. The raven from the Eyrie had been brief, but stark in its promise. Lady Lysa Arryn would put aside her caution and pledge the full strength of the Vale to the cause of House Stark. Lord Jon Royce, Bronze Jon to friend and foe alike, would march at the head of 12,000 Vale men, proud knights in shining mail, sturdy men-at-arms from the foothills, and the famed archers of the hinterglens, to meet Robb at the Twins before the rivers fell bare to autumn's bite. Ships already crowded the harbor of Gulltown, loading horses, steel, and oats for a swift passage round the Fingers and across the Bight to White Harbor. From there, the Vale host would ride overland down the King's Road, a silver flood surging to join the direwolves' howl. Robb closed his eyes, letting the morning wind tangle his auburn curls. With the Vale at their side, the Starks could challenge the Lions on corridors of stone and field alike. Tywin Lannister's legions still scoured the west, but the old lion had never faced the airy lances of the Eyrie beyond the walls of Harrenhal. Let him sit his golden pavilion and wonder when winged knights might descend upon his flank. Let him fear mountain steel sliding beneath lion plate. The thought did not bring Robb joy, only purpose, and the ironclad resolve to seize this chance before it withered. Footsteps approached across the rampart. Grey wind raised his snout from where he lay coiled near the Merlon, ears twitching. Catelyn Stark emerged, wrapped in a heavy cloak of dark blue wool, her hair a wind-tossed banner of auburn and silver. She studied her son's face and noted the shadows beneath eyes too old for 16 summers. Yet when she saw the letter in his grip, its wax seal broken, its script unmistakably ivory fine, relief melted the worry that creased her brow. "So it is true," she whispered, resting a gloved hand on the cold stone. "My sister has answered." Robb turned, managing a weary smile. 12,000 swords, he said, more softly than a lord should. "Royce commands them. They sail for White Harbor within the week." Catelyn's gaze drifted east, as though she might spy the Vale fleet upon the horizon. 12,000, she repeated, "and Bronze Jon is worth twice that in resolve. The mountain clans will ride with him, and the Waynwoods, the Corbrays, the Vale's finest." Her eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears away. "Your father would have stood taller than the wall to see us joined like this." Robb swallowed the lump rising in his throat. He would have counseled patience. He would have planned each mile of the march before a single hoof struck dirt. "Then, let us honor him in planning," his mother said, straightening. "Maester Vyman waits below with Lord Edmure's captains. We should convene the war council at once. The Vale men must find provisions, quarter, and swift passage south." Robb nodded. "Summon them. I'll be down directly." "Dane?" Catelyn lingered a breath, her glimmering eyes fixed on her son with an intensity that both comforted and pierced him. Then she turned, cloak swirling, and descended the narrow stair. Grey wind patted to Robb's side, brushing against his leg. The direwolf's fur smelled of pine and autumn rain, a scent of the northern wilds, untouched by southern rot. Robb stroked the great beast's neck, then gazed eastward once more. Across hundreds of leagues, the Vale of Arryn awakened too. Snow-capped peaks blushed beneath the same dawn. Atop the stone perch of the Eyrie, Lady Lysa Arryn stood beside a slender boy of sickly pallor. Her son Robert, who clutched her hand and peered toward horizons unseen. Lysa's letter had spoken of debts unpaid, of Ned Stark's devotion to her late husband, Jon Arryn, of her own fear undone by Catelyn's call for justice. But beneath every line pulsed another truth. If the lions were not checked, their claws would seek the Vale in time. Better to ride beneath the direwolf banner now than kneel before the lion's mailed paw later. Bronze Jon Royce oversaw the mustering at Runestone. Even as gulls wheeled overhead, his smiths and squires hammered and oiled the ancient bronze armor that lent his house its name. Knights of House Waynwood polished moon and sword sigils. The Corbrays inspected the temple at Heart's home before unsheathing Lady Forlorn, the sword whose dark steel had tasted iron-born blood and Dornish alike. Lords Templeton and Redfort drilled their men in the fields below Gulltown's high walls. From the mountain passes came ragged clansmen sworn to House Roy's, burned men bearing fresh scars, black ears with trophies of flesh, and the fearsome stone crows. Shagga son of Dolph shouted that he would drink lion's blood from a golden horn before the year was out. In Gulltown's harbor, carpenters cursed and labored, reforging hulls to bear the weight of war. Galleys and cogs bobbed like restless steeds, sails furled against the breeze. The Lord Waxley's merchant fleet was commandeered. House Grafton readied their warships, slender as needles, swift as kestrels. Grain poured from the Vale granaries, kegs of salted beef rolled onto decks, and casks of dark sweetwater wine were lashed to masts. Within sight of the city walls, the Septon the Three Sisters blessed the fleet, scattering rose petals upon brine, while chanting hymns of the warrior's might. Lord Jon watched it all from the prow of the Lady Anya, arms crossed. His granite face betrayed no emotion, but beneath the visor of his helm burned an ember older than the moon door, hatred of lions. It was Tywin Lannister who had seen King Aerys's madness and exploited it. Tywin who had seized Casterly Rock from its lord father generations before. Tywin whose hounds had hunted down the children of Rhaegar Targaryen. Tywin Lannister's gold had grown thicker than autumn fog over court and council alike. Now bronze would strike gold, and the Vale would carve its name across the annals of Westeros. If only each cog and galley found safe passage through the treacherous bight. As the fleet slipped anchor and unfurled its blue and white sails, gulls wheeled overhead, shrieking like battle trumpets. The tide swelled, ropes strained, sailors chanted. Each oar dipped into glassy water, pulling east to open sea before turning north, where dragons once soared and krakens lurked. The wind snapped banners as dawn surrendered to morning, and the fleet of the Vale glided toward destiny. In the Tower of the Hand, King's Landing seethed with rumor. Varys' little birds whispered that ships had left Gulltown, hulls brimming with knights and stores. Lord Petyr Baelish smirked behind silk-clad fingers, pretending surprise that Lady Lysa had found courage beneath layers of fear. Tywin Lannister, ensconced at Harrenhal, received the news with a stillness that sent his lord shivering. Golden eyes narrowing, gold coin rolling between calloused fingers, the mind within weighing the cost of bronze-tipped spears on the path to King's Landing. His nephew, the boy King Joffrey, demanded a head for every oar. Cersei simmered, railing at her father's caution, yet her gaze flicked northward in the quiet hours, lingering upon maps where the Eyrie perched above all corridors of stone. Sansa Stark heard the whispers too, drifting through the curtained alcoves and incense-sweet corridors of the Red Keep. Each rumor was a lantern in darkness. Her brother's name spoken with awe, the direwolf banners soaring, the Vale unchained. She clutched them like beads of prayer, uttering silent vows that Robb would come soon, that the Vale Knights might scale the city walls like falcons and bear her home. Yet hope was a fragile reed in the lion's maw. She schooled her face to grace, curtsied to hybrid smiles, and waited. Far across the city, the black cells beneath the Red Keep held Arya Stark's dancing master dead, yet her own fate danced still. Disguised as a scullion, Arya heard the talk in taverns and cellars, of ships from Gulltown, of the young wolf who never lost a battle. She ground her teeth and whispered needles' oaths beneath her breath. Let the Vale come, she swore. Let them tear the gates from their hinges and cry the name of Stark. At White Harbor, the masts rose thick as reeds along the harbor's crescent, while gulls screeched above the scented markets. Lord Wyman Manderley, broad as a beached whale yet shrewd as any harbor raven, welcomed the Vale fleet with feasts of honeyed crabs and singing septons. His men repaired salt-stung hulls, while stonemasons extended piers to accommodate the influx of grain and horseflesh. Over mulled wine, Lord Wyman spoke solemnly of oaths to Winterfell, of Ned Stark's honor, and of debts to be repaid in rivers of Lannister blood. By candlelight, maesters inscribed fresh orders and supply lists. Oats from torched Riverlands farms replaced by pride-basked Vale barley. Mountain mules traded for sturdy North steeds. Breastplates re-riveted, banners resewn, shields repainted with crescent moons and flaring falcons. Word swept ahead along the King's Road. The Vale had come. Small folk in holdfasts and shepherds along the barrows cheered at the passing columns. Bronze-helmed riders gleaming like dawnfire, ranks so long they swallowed the horizon. Villagers knelt along ditches, crying blessings upon the Lady of Winterfell and the Mother. In snow-patched fields, old men who remembered the Blackfire Rebellion whispered that such a host had not been seen since Maegor's reign. Children ran alongside, flinging wildflowers at the hooves of destriers taller than their fathers. The march south was measured and disciplined. Lord Royce rode at the vanguard, his cloak of beaten bronze leaves catching the sun. Sir Lyn Corbray scouted ahead, Lady Forlorn slung across his back like a glimmer of night, the silver sword of the Andals. Sir Jasper Waynwood kept pace beside banners of winged knights. Behind them, carts rattled with barley and beer, armorers hammered out dents from the high passes, and archers fletched spears of yew. At every village crossroad the host grew, hedge knights swearing fealty for a chance at lion gold, mountain clans eager to barter honor for vengeance. Green boys clutching spears in trembling hands, eyes wide with dreams of glory. Bronze Yone kept strict order. Each dawn, horns blared reveille. Each evening, pickets dug ditches. Each night, campfires glimmered beneath watchful eyes. He meted justice swift and fair. A thief lost 3 fingers. A marauding freerider swung from an oak. This was no sellsword rabble, but a blade honed for a single stroke. Tywin would feel its edge. At Riverrun, Robb convened his council in the Great Hall, hung with river trout and deer wolves. Around the long oaken table sat the lords of the north. Roose Bolton, silent and pale. Great John Umber, booming boasts with ale-spattered laugh. Sir Helman Tallheart, measured and calm. The brothers Mormont, one gray-haired, one golden-bearded. Karstarks with snow-white mantles. Galbart Glover's stern regard. From the Riverlands came Lord Jason Mallister in sea-blue cloak. Lord Tydos, Blackwood with ravens on red, and dour Jonos Bracken, eyeing his arch-rival's sigil across the table. At the head sat Robb, Grey Wind at his feet, his mother at his right hand. Maps sprawled beneath flickering torches. The Green Fork snaking south, the neck narrowing to bog and reed. The Ruby Ford still stained by the blood of Tully men. To the west, Harrenhal squatted like a burned skull. Farther, the gold hills of the Westerlands rolled toward Casterly Rock. Markers denoted armies. Tywin at Harrenhal with 20,000. Sir Stafford Lannister gathering another host at Lannisport. King Joffrey's Red Cloaks garrisoning the capital. New markers. Silver falcons on blue. Clustered at White Harbor. The Vale host will not reach the Twins before the new moon, Maester Vyman said, fingers sliding across the parchment. But we cannot tarry here either. Lord Tywin may strike at Riverrun while we wait. Great John Umber slammed a fist. Let him come. We'll roast his entrails and feed them to his goats. Roose Bolton's eyes shone like dusk on ice. Tywin Lannister does not rush. He will send Sir Gregor and Sir Emery to burn the Riverlands anew, bleeding Lord Edmure's levies. He will lure you south, then strike north. But the Vale's arrival alters his sums. He placed a slender finger on Harrenhal. If Bronze Yone marches hard, Tywin must either hold Harrenhal against siege or retreat west to protect his supply lines. Galbart Glover nodded. And if he retreats, we may unite the River Lords, the Northmen, and the Vale beneath one hammer blow. Catelyn watched her son, weighing each counsel. Robb's jaw clenched. We cannot allow Tywin free rein in the west. Sir Stafford builds a fresh army at Lannisport Dada. If Lord Tywin joins him, they'll strike north through the Golden Tooth, cross the Tumblestone, and cut us from our home. He moved a wolf marker. We march west with our river lords. Lord John will ride south from White Harbor, cross the Trident here. His fingertip touched the Ruby Ford, then follow the Gold Road. 2 armies on 2 fronts. Tywin must divide or flee. Roose Bolton's voice slid across the torch's crackle. A bold stroke. Fail, and we are devoured. Succeed, and the Lannisters bleed from 2 wounds they cannot stanch. Greatjon laughed. Fear cuts deeper than swords, Bolton. Better to swing than to cower. Bevan. Robb raised a hand. I will not throw lives away on folly, my lords. But this war will not be won by waiting. Every day my sisters remain captive. Joffrey tightens the noose. Every village Tywin sacks weakens our friends. When the Vale rides, we ride. A murmur of assent and doubt tangled in the hall. Yet the decision was made. Steel clinked as men shifted in cloaks. Catelyn watched her son. Young, resolute, a wolf pup, bearing the mantle of kings. 12,000 fresh swords would soon test that mantle. 2 nights later, as a swollen orange moon rose above rivulets of mist, Robb Stark knelt alone in the godswood of Riverrun. Crimson leaves rustled overhead. The heart tree's pale face wept sap tears into the pool. Robb pressed his forearm to the cool black water, whispering prayers half remembered from childhood. That the old gods watch over the men about to march. That the winds carry the Vale fleet safe. That winter hold its breath a little longer. The night air smelled of earth and iron. Frogs chirred at the water's edge. Somewhere a nightjar called. Robb's whisper caught as he thought of Bran and Rickon back in Winterfell. Sansa trapped in a snake's nest. Arya lost to rumor. His father's bones boxed in cedar awaiting passage home. When he rose, the moonlight burnished tears upon his cheek. Grey wind padded beside him, amber eyes reflecting starlight. They moved through silver shadows to the castle gate, where banners stirred in a whispering wind. Beyond lay nights of dust and sweat, dawns of trumpet and blood. Robb Stark mounted his courser, and with a soft word, turned toward the echoing courtyard where 3,000 Northmen formed ranks beneath torch glow. Spear points glittered, shields locked, pennons of roaring deerwolves unfurled. The host would ride before dawn, stride for stride with the river lords, to meet destiny upon the stony fields of the west. Over the coming weeks, the Vale host cut south as summer's last warmth lingered. At dusk, knights sparred by firelight. At dawn, archers loosed arrows into straw men capped with golden curls. Bronjeon spoke little but listened much, gathering tales of Tywin's cruelty, of farmers flayed, of maidens taken, of trampled harvests. Each tale was a nail hammered into the coffins he meant to craft for Lannister lords. When scouts brought word of the Northmen's departure, Royce grunted approval and drove his men harder. The Falcon and the Wolf would meet in glory, or die in tandem. South of the Trident, Sir Adam Marbrand watched the horizon from atop his palfrey, helm tucked under one arm. Dust plumes rose to the north. He cursed softly. 10,000 men or 20? Hard to say. The Trident's bends obscured the road beyond each ridge. Yet one fact was certain. Banners of blue falcon on cream soared amid the haze. The Vale had joined the game. Marbrand spurred his horse racing south to Harrenhal. Tywin Lannister received the news in the shell of an old audience chamber, its walls scorched by dragonfire centuries past. He unfolded a map across a pitted table, eyes narrowing to slits. Bronzeon, he murmured. So my sister-in-law found her pride at last. His voice bore neither surprise nor anger, only calculation. Around him, the captains of the West shifted uneasily. Lord Leo Lefford coughed. Sir Kevin Lannister glanced at his brother, waiting. Tywin's fingers tapped the parchment. Send Sir Amory with 3,000 to harry their flank, burn forage, fell bridges. The Vale Knights rely on fodder. Starve their mounts, you break their charge. Sir Gregor will ride with another 2,000 raiders north of the Trident. If the young wolf marches west, he'll find ashes in his wake. He lifted cold eyes. We do not flinch. We bleed them, slowly, until their resolve cracks. The captains bowed. Yet as they withdrew, Tywin lingered, staring at the charred rafters, listening to the echoes of ancient screams. If the Vale and North combined, even his legions might falter. He would need new pawns, new stratagems. Gold could buy swords, but it could also buy time. Time, however, favored Robb Stark and Jon Royce. Their hosts converged upon the crossroads north of the Green Fork, under a sky the color of spilled wine. When the two young armies beheld each other across fresh trampled fields, a cheer rolled like summer thunder. Knights of the Vale raised sharpened lances in salute. Northmen stamped axes against shields. Robb rode forward beneath a banner of grey direwolf, grey wind loping at his side. Bronze Jon met him in mail of antiquated bronze scales, visor raised to reveal a smile carved of stone. They clasped forearms, wolf and falcon united at last. That night, the twin camps merged into a sea of fire. Minstrels plucked harps and sang of falcon and wolf. Fiery mead passed from cup to cup. 1,000 banners snapped in the fragrant breeze. Robb walked among the tents, accepting toasts, lending ear to grievances, promising justice. At the largest bonfire, Shagga son of Dolf brandished a Lannister helm he had bored with holes. "Drink, little kings," he bellowed, sloshing ale across the logs. "Tomorrow we carve lions." Yet dawn brought not battle, but strategy. In a broad pavilion, Robb and Jon spread Tywin's realm upon coarse linen. Rivers, roads, garrisons, grain stores. They weighed each like gamblers with stolen coins. Scouts reported Ser Gregor's riders tearing through Maidenpool, leaving charred earth. Behind him, supply wagons rumbled from Lannisport to Harrenhal. Robb's face tightened. "Gregor Clegane is a hound off its chain. We must leash him." Bronze Jon traced a path. "You strike Harrenhal from the north. I wheel south and cut the wagons. Starve Tywin within his own cursed keep. He cannot fight on two fronts." "We'll need the bridges at the Red Fork," Robb said. "Lord Blackwood's archers can hold them. The Freys." He hesitated. Lord Walder Frey's allegiance hung on oaths like cobweb strands. "I'll send swift riders to the twins. Remind the lore of the crossing where honor lies." "Bedwant." Caitlin entered then, cloak dusted with dew. "Honor may not sway old Lord Walder. Gold and marriage pacts will." Her voice held warning. Robb flushed, remembering betrothals sworn and debts owed. But there was no time. Victory demanded they cross the twins unchallenged. That afternoon, messengers flew like startled doves. Hollow drums beat along river shores. The Val's silver trumpets answered the North's ancient horns, echoing across meadows ripe for harvest. And as shadows lengthened, Robb Stark looked upon his army. 30,000 strong, banners like a forest in wind, and felt the ember in his chest blaze into white flame. Miles away, in the haunted halls of Harrenhal, Tywin Lannister poised his quill above parchment, writing to King's Landing, instructing Cersei to secure the Tyrell alliance at any cost, commanding Joffrey to hold his court and keep Ser Barristan at his side, ordering the Redwyne fleet to blockade the Gullet. But as ink dried, Tywin's mind wandered to strange visions. Deery wolves and falcons circling above a burnt crown, bronze talons raking golden hides. He shook off the fancy, sealing the parchment with wax-stamped lion's head. Outside, ravens gathered on cracked battlements, black wings glinting in dusk's last light. They watched the horizon, where dust clouds roiled like brewing storms. Beneath the shadow of a single crescent moon, bronze met iron, wolf met falcon, and the Game of Thrones trembled. At sunset on the third day after the Union of Hosts, Robb Stark assembled his captains atop a gentle rise overlooking the Green Fork's glimmer. The air buzzed with insects, and the grass at their boots waved like surrendering blades. "Tomorrow," Robb began, voice steady, "we march for Harrenhal. Lord Jon will cut east with the Vale van. We strike at daybreak, seize the causeway over the causeway pyres, and encircle the castle before Tywin Can's sortie." Great John Umber roared approval. Lady Mage Mormont thumped her shield. Even the stoic Roose Bolton permitted a ghost of a smile. Across the circle, Bronze Jon's bronze-clad shoulders inclined in assent. Robb raised his sword. When the horns sound thrice, all banners advance. Archers loose upon the walls, ladders rise. We take the gate. We will break the lions' jaws and cast their crowns into the river. Thunderous cheers followed. Yet amid the uproar, Catelyn Stark felt her heart tighten. Victory sung sweet, but warriors' dice were fickle. She thought of her daughters, of Winterfell's gray walls far to the north, of Ned's voice whispering caution in dreams. She tightened her cloak and stepped forward. "My lords," he called, her voice slicing the din, "remember the lives entrusted to your care. Strike true, but hold mercy where mercy is due. We fight for our families, our homes, and the promise of a realm where justice reigns. Let that guide your swords." Silence fell for a heartbeat. Then softer, an echoing assent. Torches were lit, banners furled, captains dispersed to their companies. Robb lingered, staring west where Harrenhal's towers jutted like broken fangs against a bruised sky. He felt his father's memory at his back, his sister's pleas in his ears, the North's faith in his very blood. Gray wind nuzzled his gauntlet, silent promise of tooth and shadow. And as the first star pierced the velvet dome above, Robb Stark drew a breath sharp as new-forged steel. Tomorrow, the Vale in the north would rise as one. Tomorrow bronze wings would shelter gray fur. Tomorrow would test the mettle of lions. The night held its breath. Oh, hey, no. A fetid mist clung to the banks of the Green Fork as dawn stretched pale fingers across a world of mud and trampled reeds. Along the river's western verge, the tents of 30,000 men lay hushed, each pavilion a dim lantern of firelit canvas blinking in the gloom. Sparrows burst from hedges at the sudden crack of axe on cedar, teamsters felling fresh poles for supply wagons, while somewhere deeper in the encampment, a woman's muffled lullaby drifted beneath a makeshift awning. War, for a heartbeat, seemed merely a restless village waking too early. Then a horn blared 3 long notes, flat and mournful, and the camp lurched from dreams into purpose. Robb Stark was already mounted when the horn's cry faded, his breath a stream of white fog in the chill. Gray wind padded beside his horse, hackles lifted, sensing the tide of fear and anticipation rolling through the men like unseen surf. The young wolf's face was gaunt from sleepless nights, yet the steel in his blue eyes caught the torch glow and cast it back as if he kept a shard of dawn within. Around him his personal guard formed, a knot of tall spearmen in mottled grays and browns, stitched with the snarling direwolf, while just beyond the circle, the emerald banners of House Tully mingled with the dark greens of the Mormonts and the snow-white sons of Carhold. The Vale's silver falcons glittered among them, each stitched on cloth so fine it seemed woven from moonlight. Bronzion Royce rode up, rain-dappled bronze mail clinking tight. The aged lord saluted with 2 fingers to the brow. "Doubts report the fords are clear," he said, voice low. "Lord Walder keeps his bridges barred for now, but he has not yet hoisted the red and blue against us. He is waiting to be courted." "Eh," Robb answered, "and courtiers pay in daughters." His mouth twisted with distaste. "Still, we pay or we bleed. The twins cannot be taken by force without days we haven't to spend." Catelyn Stark joined them then, roan mare picking delicately through ruts. She inclined her head to Royce, but when her gaze settled on her son, it filled with the familiar measure of worry and pride. "Your Uncle Edmure has drafted fresh promises for Lord Walder," she said, producing a parchment sealed with Tully wax. "Guest right guaranteed, debts enumerated, and 2 marriages offered. 1 Riverlord daughter to Frey, 1 minor Arryn cousin as well. Lord Walder may find the mix tasteful." Robb took the scroll and tucked it beneath his cloak. "He will if he values a place in the songs of victory." He spurred his horse. "Come then. The Lord of the Crossing awaits." Venderwine. The march to the twins rolled westward beneath a sky of pewter, the road choking in places to churn sludge, forcing knights to dismount and trudge beside their destriers. Wagons creaked, chains rattled, and the rain, a cold, needling drizzle, slipped between gorget and mail to tickle sweaty skin. Yet spirits held firm, Vale men sang a lilting ballad of Alyssa Erin's tears, Northmen bellowed the bear and the maiden fair, and when both songs met, they twined into a rough harmony that made even the driest throats wet with laughter. Catelyn rode near the vanguard, cloak drawn tight, watching the mingling banners fluttering above this living river of steel. She imagined her father's halls safe again, rivers unscarred by fire. But each vision braided itself with fear. Of Walder Frey's caprice, of Tywin's black-armored columns gathering at Harrenhal, of her daughters caged in a viper's nest. She prayed to the Seven and the old gods alike, asking that either might hold vigil over the fragile hope carried on so many oaths. By midday, the towers of the twins thrust from the horizon. Two squat slabs of gray stone straddling the green fork, connected by a covered bridge high above the churning water. Even in half-washed daylight, the keeps loomed forbidding, their arrow slits black as empty sockets. Trumpets wailed, and the column slowed. Trumpeters of House Frey appeared upon the battlements, their silver horns bright against moss-slick stone. A standard bore the twin towers on a field of silver gray, snapping stiffly in the wind. Robb halted his horse before the eastern tower gate. A drawbridge remained lifted beyond the knee-high riverbank. The spaces between its iron teeth dripped stagnant water. He raised a mailed fist. Behind him the march stilled, rattles fading to hush. Rain tapped a slow cadence on shields. A face appeared above the portcullis. Lord Walder's second son, Sir Emmon, thin-chinned and perpetually sour. He squinted at the assembled lords with undisguised impatience. "The Lord of the Crossing bids 3 envoys only," he called, "and unarmed, lest the old stones grow restless." Robb suppressed a scowl. Beside him Catelyn's eyes narrowed. "Envoys," she said softly. "He means hostages." Bronze Yon snorted. "Let him. I have survived more perilous dinner tables than Lord Walder's." He swung down from his horse and beckoned a squire to take the reins. Yet Robb shook his head. "I will go myself," he said. "He must see the stakes in my own face. My mother will come as well, and Lord John." He glanced at Royce, "For the Vale must stand witness to our bargain." Catelyn opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. She pressed a hand to his forearm, her glove slick with rain. "We will choose our words with care." Gray wind emitted a low rumble, sensing her unease, but Robb whispered a calming word. The drawbridge thudded down, chain links groaning. 3 riders crossed into the shadowed gatehouse. Above, archers watched, arrows knocked, but tension felt more ceremonial than menacing. If Walder Frey meant treachery, he would not cloak it behind such pageantry. The gate clanged shut behind them, and iron-bound oak doors opened to admit the visitors into a hall that smelled of damp straw, beer, and old grievances. The great hall of the twins burned with torchlight. At its far end, Lord Walder Frey reclined upon a high-backed chair like a shriveled spider in a rocky web. 80 years had scoured color from his hair and bent his shoulders, yet his eyes glittered with undimmed appetite. Around him stood ranks of sons, grandsons, bastards, and daughters, each shifting with the arrogance of small folk elevated by proximity. Robb advanced until he reached the foot of the dais. He bowed, every motion measured. "Lord Walder," he began, voice carrying, "I come seeking passage across your bridge, that the North and the Vale may pursue justice for crimes done against us and ours." "Justice," Walder croaked, lips peeling into a wolfish smile. "A costly vintage these days, especially when poured so plentifully. How fares my good daughter Lady Catelyn, still keeping your pup from biting bigger dogs?" Catelyn's face remained a mask. "My lord," she said, "my son is king in the north, and this host stands not as pups but wolves. The Vale rides with us, delay us at risk of their ire as well." "A falcon perched upon a wolf's back," Walder mused. "How novel. Yet even a falcon needs a place to land. Bridges make fine perches, do they not?" He snapped gnawed fingers. "The terms," he declared. Catelyn produced the parchments. Robb spoke them aloud. Quartering rights, tariffs on grain imported after autumn, promises of chivalric protection, 2 Frey daughters to wed Edmure's nephews, and a younger Arryn cousin pledged for Sir Perwyn Frey. At each item Walder clicked his tongue, as if tasting broth too hot. When Robb finished, Walder leaned forward. "Sweet words, but daughters are like coins. One spends them only once. I count 3 wives offered, yet I have 31 daughters still unwed." Chortles rippled among his brood. Perhaps the young wolf would take one to wife. Robb stiffened. At his side, Catelyn's breath caught. Bronze Yon's knuckles whitened against his belt. "My lord," Robb said carefully, "the battles ahead demand all my focus. Taking a wife during war." "Oh, pish," Walder interrupted. "Robert Baratheon did it in rebellion easily enough, and you Starks are fond of weddings. Come, lad, inspect the wares." He gestured. A line of young women shuffled forward. Some plain, some comely, all with that Frey mouth somewhat too large for the jaw. Robb felt heat flush his cheeks. His heart hammered with dread, not desire. Catelyn chose her moment. "Lord Walder," she said, stepping forward to intercept. "Your daughters are fair, but my son is yet untested in peace. Promise him a crossing now. And when the war is won, he will return to choose among your daughters. A victorious king is a greater prize than a beleaguered one." Walder's eyes glittered. "A promissory bride?" Pat." Wagers upon wagers. He drummed thin nails on armrest. The hall held its breath. Robb raised his head. "If I fail," he said, "I will owe you nothing, for I will be dead. If I succeed, the late House Bolton will vacate the Dreadfort." He cast a sidelong glance at Roose's absent shadow. "And the Dreadfort's lands will be granted as dowry to whichever daughter I wed. Thus you gain northern foothold and greater name." Whispers rustled. Atop the dais, Walder froze, calculating. Bronze Yon smothered a grin behind a weather-bitten palm. Cat's eyes flickered surprise, then approval. Finally, the old man tapped cane upon flagstone. "Agreed," he rasped. "Cross, then, and may the others gnaw your bones if you break word." He beckoned to retainers. "Open the bridge, feast the envoys, and fetch my good daughter a drier cloak. She drips upon my hall." 3 hours later, Robb's host rumbled across the twins in a procession that shook stone foundations themselves. Archers lined the rooftops, but their gaze was curious, not hostile. Country folk flocked to watch from muddy banks, marveling at the shining Vale armor and the direwolf standards flapping damp but proud. From the enclosed timber passages above the river, the stench of tarred ropes and pigeon droppings mingled with the faint tremor of thousands of boots. Gray wind refused to cross the covered span, hackles bristling at the echo of rushing water. Robb soothed him, but the direwolf slunk beneath open sky instead, paddling across a shallows farther up, coming out dripping and unbowed. Frey boys gasped from parapets. One called it an omen. No one dared question a beast the size of a small horse. Beyond the crossing, the land sloped gently toward the western hills. Bronze Yon gave orders, and the column fanned, reforming under banners, adjusting baggage trunks. Catelyn rode among the supply wagons, checking stores, ensuring Frey toll men weighed grain fairly. The Vale men gifted walnuts and plums to North boys, unused to such luxuries. Laughter rose despite rain. Nightfall greeted them at a ruined hamlet, whose thatches smoldered. Clegane riders had passed 3 days prior. The smell of charred timber and human ash still hung thick. Robb walked burned streets, jaw clenched as he beheld a child's wooden knight scorched black, half buried in mud. He knelt, brushing soot from painted face. Gray wind whimpered. Bronze Yon stood behind him, silent. "They leave such signposts," Yon said at last, voice grim. "Gregor Clegane culls. Hope from the land so fear may grow in its place." Robb rose. "Then we carve his fear from bone." He turned to scouts assembling by torchlight. "Find the mountain. Track his path." That night, while fires crackled among ruins, Catelyn sat with Maester Vyman beneath a warped mill wheel, poring over Raven's messages by flickering candle. One scrap bore sigils of White Harbor. Wyman mandraily pledged river barges to ferry wounded. He also warned of ironborn raiders menacing the stony shore. Another raven came from Deepwood Motte. Lady Sabelle Glover reported no Lannister move against the neck. But the third scroll chilled them. Sir Helman Tallheart, holding Moat Caelan, sighted banners of House Bolton broken and burned outside Torrhen's Square. No survivors found. Caitlin clenched fists. "Roosey's men," she whispered. A message for his defection, or a warning misplaced. Vyman could offer no answer. By dawn, scouts returned. The mountain's host, near 600 heavy horse and thrice that number of pillagers, camped at an abandoned sept south of Maidenpool. Robb convened a swift council. The plan formed like a blade quenched in ice. Bronze Yawn and the Vale's heavy lancers would ride ahead by moonless dark, circling unseen through wooded ridges. At first, light Robb's outriders would feign a scattered retreat northward, luring Gregor to give chase. Royce would strike from the flank, pinning the mountain between anvil and hammer, Vale bronze blades driving him toward a line of North spearmen hidden in roadside hedges. Robb would then cut south and sever the path to Harrenhal, isolating Gregor from Tywin's main host. The trap required precision. Any misstep and Clegane's brute strength could smash either column. Yet the prize, removing the mountain from the field, was worth the hazard. Orders leapt from tongue to parchment, from parchment to wings. When dusk fell, the Vale cavalry slipped away, hooves muffled with wool. Robb shared a final glance with Caitlin as he tightened Grey Wind's saddle harness. She saw fear behind his resolve, and touched his cheek as she once had before he rode his first pony. "Remember," she whispered, "steel obeys will, but victory obeys fate. Do all you can, then leave the rest to gods." He nodded, eyes shining, then swung astride and vanished into the gloom with his guard. Night bled slowly. Crickets hummed, an owl hooted thrice. Vale horsemen threaded silent among pines, their armor dulled with soot. Bronze Yawn rode at 4, every sense stretched toward the dark, recalling campaigns long gone. The Ninepenny Kings, the Peak Rebellion, raids along the fingers. He could almost feel Jon Arryn's steady presence at his shoulder. "Watch me now, old friend," he muttered. At first pale glow of false dawn, Gregor Clegane's sentries spied what looked like a ragged force of Northmen stumbling along the King's Road, torches sputtering, banners drooping as though frost wilted. They spread news through the camp. Helmets slapped onto heads, swords rasped free. Gregor himself mounted his towering stallion, black armor already spattered with old gore. "Ride them down," he growled. "Take their heads for my pikes." His visor slammed shut. North outriders bolted, weaving and scattering, drawing the mountain's ire. The Lannister host thundered in pursuit, hooves churning dust. They crossed a low ridge and followed a dip in the road between sloping woods. There, Bronze Yawn's trumpets screamed like eagles. Vale lances burst from the trees, bronze gleaming red in sunrise. Horses crashed into Clegane's flank with bone-snapping power. The mountain's forward ranks folded under the shock. Gregor bellowed fury, swinging his monstrous sword in arcs that cleaved man and mount alike. But for every foe he felled, 2 more surged. Royce men shouting, "Falcon! Falcon!" Behind the Lannisters, hedges erupted as North spearmen charged downhill, pikes leveled. Robb Stark rode at their center, Grey Wind racing ahead, fangs bared. The wolf leapt upon a Lannister captain, dragging him screaming from saddle. Robb's sword crashed through another, shield splintering. Horns blared thrice, cutting through clangor. The signal to close. Clegane understood then. He wheeled, urging his stallion toward a gap, but a flight of Vale arrows hissed overhead, felling the beast under him. The mountain hit earth with a thunderous crunch. He rose in one fluid motion, roaring, carving a bloody circle. Bronze Yawn spurred forward, couching lance. He aimed not for Gregor's heart, too well armored, but for the unsealed armpit. Yet Gregor pivoted, blade flashing. The lance shattered like kindling, and Royce reeled as splinters cut his cheek. Robb sighted the duel. With a savage shout he charged. Clegane turned, sword raised, but Grey Wind streaked low, hamstringing him. Gregor staggered. Robb's sword hammered into the giant's breastplate. Dented yet not pierced. The mountain's mailed fist struck Robb's helm, staggering him. Bronze Yawn recovered, seized a fallen axe and hewed it at Gregor's knee. Metal shrieked. Gregor fell to one leg. Chaos swirled around. Men dying, horses screaming, spears shattering on shields. Amid it, small folk might mark 3 figures. Giant, young king, old lord, locked in orbit. Gregor swung downward in final fury. Blade-rending Royce's left pauldron, bone cracked. Bronzion gasped but held. Robb stepped inside the giant's reach and drove his second sword thrust into the dent his first had opened. Steel screeched past plate and found flesh. Gregor Clegane's roar curdled into wet gurgle. He staggered. Gray wind lunged and tore the exposed throat beneath the helm. The mountain toppled, a felled tower. Silence rippled outward as his men, seeing their champion die, broke. Arrows and spears hunted them as they fled into woods, but Robb called cease. "Let them spread fear," he said, chest heaving. Bronzion leaned on the axe, blood-soaking bronze scales. Robb grasped his shoulder. "My lord? Your wound?" "A scratch," Royce rasped, though he swayed. Robb signaled for his maester. The old knight straightened, pride shining. The lion's fangs grew dull. Crows circled overhead, shrieking at dawn. They would feast well this day. News of the mountain's death flew faster than ravens. At Harrenhal, Tywin Lannister received it from Sir Adam Marbrand, whose dust-caked cloak bore still the fear of rout. Candlelight danced over Tywin's stony face, revealing no crack, yet his fists whitened until veins bulged. "Send word to my sister," he said, voice quieter than falling ash. "King's Landing must prepare." He turned to a squire. "Summon my captains at once." "We ride for the Blackwater, not the Blackwater." "No." He paused. Mind racing, we ride west. To Lannisport, we gather every sword remaining. "But my lord," Marbrand ventured. "Harrenhal." "Harrenhal is a tomb," Tywin snapped. "Let the ghosts keep it." He strode toward a window slit, staring into night. "The falcon and the wolf steal our breath. We will strike at their hearts instead. Send raids across the neck. Hire sail sails to Harry White Harbor. If they chase us west, King's Landing stands. If they turn south, the north is laid bare." His gaze drifted to the charred ceiling beams above, as though he might read prophecy there. For the first time since the war began, the old lion contemplated defeat, and devised cruelties to avert it. While Tywin orchestrated new gambits, Robb's joined host swallowed the carnage, burying dead beneath cairns, salting the ground against rot. Bronzion's wound proved deep but clean. Maester Vyman stitched and poulticed it while Catelyn stood vigil. "Jon Arryn's eagle still soars," she told him, squeezing his hand. That evening, Robb convened war council among the felled wagons of Gregor's baggage train. Lannister gold bars, payment for pillaged harvest, gleaned from open chests. "Distribute it among river lords to rebuild," Robb ordered. "Let the lion's gold mend what their claws set to ruin." He traced Harrenhal's outline on fresh maps. "Tywin will not linger. We march within 3 days, with Bolton scouts riding ahead. Harrenhal emptied is still a stronghold of gates and towers. We must secure it before Sir Stafford's new host swells." "Deorenton." Roose Bolton, newly arrived, bent over the map, eyes unreadable. "My flayed men will hold the causeways," he offered. Robb thanked him, unaware of whispers riding south, of Dreadfort ravens unreturned. As plans unfurled, Catelyn spied worry in Robb's clenched jaw. Later she found him alone among picketed horses, staring at cruel twilight. "You slew the mountain," she said. "We slew him," he replied hollowly. "But every victory stacks another corpse upon my heart. I dream of a stairway built of the fallen mother. I climb it, but every step is Ned or Jory or some nameless farmer's boy." She touched his cheek, wet not with tears but rain. "Climb then, and carry their memory higher with each step. That is how we honor them." He nodded, but said no more. 2 nights hence, the host advanced again. Vale lancers rode point, eyes sweeping for ambush. Northmen trudged behind wagons now laden with captured grain. Through fields blackened by fire they came. through hamlets where small folk knelt offering bread and bitter ale. In the distance, wolves howled nightly, emboldened by the scent of so many dead, yet Grey Wind's presence kept them to shadow. On the fourth day, scouts reported Harrenhal's towers looming across a flat expanse of reeds. Smoke curled from one broken turret, but gatehouses stood unmanned, portcullis yawning wide. The castle's melted walls, fused by a dragon breath 3 centuries past, glistened like candle wax in sun. An unnatural hush lay over the ruin. Robb ordered halt. His keenest eyes, Galbart Glover, Sir Brynden Tully, and Sir Lyn Corbray, crept forward with handful of rangers. They crossed weed-choked moat on fallen tree trunks, slipped through the gaping gatehouse. Within, they found charred courtyards strewn with bones, a stench of decay seeping from stables where livestock had been butchered to foul the ground. Mutilated corpses of prisoners dangled from ramparts. Some bore flayed sigils, a grim calling card that puzzled them, for Tywin preferred cleaner doctrine. Ravens flocked among towers, croaking triumph. Sir Brynden returned pale. "The castle is ours," he said, "but it is cursed with rot. We will need lime pits and strong stomachs." Robb thanked him, then summoned Bolt. "Begin burial details," he ordered. "We claim Harrenhal's strength but purge its horror." Bolton bowed, lips twitching in what might have been smile. That night, fires brightened the ruined yards as soldiers hacked away bodies, stacked arms, and pitched collapsed thatches. Catelyn walked the perimeter with Robb, observing men's reactions. Some boasted of sleeping in King's Hall, where Aegon had once feasted. Others muttered of ghosts. From a high walk they gazed east over the lake called the God's Eye, moonlight rippling silver. In its center, the Isle of Faces lay dark and secret, willows dripping over still water. Robb's voice softened. "I would give much to send a skiff to that isle, to ask old gods for counsel." "Perhaps they answer already," Catelyn said, gesturing to the campfires beyond. "Tens of thousands of tiny flames in the dark, each a life, each a prayer. We speak to them with our deeds." Robb nodded, but tension lingered. "Tywin heads west, I am told," he said, "leaving King's Landing to Queen Cersei and whatever sellswords she can muster. If we pursue him, we abandon the Riverlands. If we turn south, we threaten the capital yet invite his new host behind us." "A forked road," Catelyn murmured, "and each path lined with bones." Far below, Bronze Yawn emerged, bandaged but unbowed, conferring with Blackfish Brynden. Robb straightened. "For tonight, we rest. Tomorrow we weigh counsel, and choose." "Non de pan terror." They descended from the wall, unaware that in Blackwater Bay, a fleet bearing golden roses unfurled sails toward King's Landing. Mace Tyrell's answer to Cersei's summons, and that Walder Frey, hearing of Gregor's demise, sharpened new ambitions. The game's board shifted, each piece alive with hunger. In the dank crypt beneath Harrenhal's wailing tower, Roose Bolton met quietly with a pale-faced man in dark leathers, his bastard son, Ramsay Snow. No torches lit their conference, only a single candle guttered, casting long shadows like flapping wings. "The wolf grows bold," Roose whispered, voice soft as falling ash. "Bold wolves forget traps." He placed a scroll into Ramsay's gloved hand. "Ride for the Dreadfort. Gather what men remain loyal. When winter fogs the neck, march south. Claim Winterfell in the wolf's absence. The North must learn new songs." Ramsay grinned, teeth catching candlelight. "Songs of flayed flesh." "If need be," Roose replied, eyes dead. "But secrecy first. Wear other skins until the hour of scream." Candles sputtered, and darkness swallowed them. Morning broke cool and brittle. Robb convened captains in Harrenhal's shattered sept, ribs of stone vaulting above like the carcass of some massive beast. Sunshafts pierced holes in the roof, illuminating dust motes drifting over cracked tiles of marble, still faintly veined with ruby. Bronze Yawn stood at Robb's right, Maester Vyman at left, recording council. Arguments flew. Lord Karstark urged pursuit west, to finish Tywin before he birthed new armies. Jason Mallister favored sweeping south to King's Landing, to free Sansa, and lay siege before winter seas hindered relief. Lady Mormont thundered that the Ironborn were raiding Deepwood Motte unchecked. The north must not be left undefended. Even measured Roose Bolton spoke. "Strike boldly but guard the neck. The Krakens taste blood." Robb listened, weighing. Maps sprawled across a broken altar, markers crowded like children jostling for Mother's eye. He lifted one, a falcon wolf sigil newly carved the night before, and set it astride the gold road halfway to Casterly Rock. "Tywin races home," he said. "We cannot outmarch him across his own country. Yet if we draw him back east, we split his strength." Monan sat. He placed a second marker, a silver fish, at Maidenpool. "Lord Jason, you sail north with the captured Lannister galleys and harry the coast. Feints will suggest an amphibious thrust toward Crackclaw Point." The old panther nodded, mustache bristling. A deerwolf marker slid south along the Trident. "I lead the main host down the Blackwater Road, banking toward King's Landing." Gasps rippled. Robb raised a hand. "But we halt at Blackwater Rush. Bronze Yohn will detach 5,000 Vale Knights and hold the King's Road behind us. When Tywin returns east to defend the city, Royce strikes his rear. We pinch the line between Rush and Hammer." "Dissel," murmured approval rose. Yet Catelyn's voice, soft, cut through. "And Sansa, Arya?" Robb's gaze met hers. Pain flickered. "I will not risk all for a siege unless victory certain. But our approach may rattle Cersei. In her haste, she might trade hostages for breathing space." He inhaled. "If the Tyrells reach King's Landing first, they may shield Sansa. Word from our friends in the capital suggests Lord Mace sails with near 60,000. Bronze Yohn arched brow. "Foxes chasing foxes while wolves sniff the door. Very well." He clapped gauntlet to chest. "The Vale rides with you." Thus the council broke, orders fanning out on Raven Wing. Harrenhal's melted towers echoed anew with hammer on anvil as smiths repaired siege rams from twisted gates. Fletchers stripped Clegane arrows and refitted them to north shafts. Healers scoured chambers for clean straw. And beyond the walls, smoke from funeral pyres coiled skyward, the breath of those who would march no more. Far to the south, in the gilded halls of the Red Keep, Sansa Stark stood behind Queen Cersei's throne during court. Eyes cast downward. Courtiers whispered of Tyrell ships sighted, of Lannister defeat, of a northern king bearing falcon wings. Joffrey screamed at a knight for scuffing marble with muddy boot, but his voice cracked and he flushed. Even Ser Boros and Ser Meryn shifted uneasy. Later, Varys waylaid Sansa within a walled garden of purple irises. "Child," he murmured, plucking a blossom. "Seeds blown on wind can take root in cracks of stone. Listen for cracks." She dared look up. His eyes shone with something like pity. "Your brother howls near," he added, and drifted away in a rustle of lavender silk. That night, while moonlight sketched silver bars across her bedchamber, Sansa pressed ear to shutters and heard distant bells toll. Blackwater Bay greeting newcomers. Hope fluttered fragile wings within her chest. She prayed her brother's banners might soon crest horizon, even as she feared what storms must precede them. Back at Harrenhal, dusk found Robb walking the ramparts alone. Gray wind paced nearby, nose twitching at scents on cool wind. Below, men bedded down, armor stacked, songs drifting. The castle felt less haunted now, filled near to bursting with beating hearts and clanging ambition. Yet Robb's own heart felt carved hollow. He drew from his doublet a dog-eared parchment, the Vale Raven of days past, and reread Lysa's words, though the ink had smudged where early tears had fallen. "Lord Yohn's loyalty is worth more than swords," Catelyn's voice recalled in memory. "But loyalty must be tended like any rose." Robb folded the parchment, replaced it, and stared west to where twilight spilled over distant blue ridges. Somewhere beyond those hills his father's bones were carried south by septons bound for Winterfell. Somewhere beyond lay the rock, thrumming with Lannister coin. Somewhere beyond, Tywin's will kneaded the realm like dough. "Father," Robb whispered. "Guide me." The wind stirred his hair. Below, Grey Wind raised his snout and howled, long, mournful, carrying across still lake and hollow halls. From scattered fires Northmen answered, their voices rough, and then Valemen too, uncertain at first but swelling, until the night rang with 1,000 throats joined in lupine lament. Even the ravens upon towers fell quiet, perhaps listening. Robb closed his eyes. For a heartbeat he felt Ned beside him, a steady hand on his shoulder, the scent of pine forests beyond Winterfell. When he opened them, the night remained, vast, perilous, but clear. War waited on the morrow's road. Yet so too did a realm hungering for change, and a promise scratched in blood across the pages of history. That lions could bleed, mountains fall, and wings of bronze might shelter wolves of winter. Robb Stark turned from the parapet, cloak snapping. Tomorrow they would march south, to feint, to lure, to strike, and carve fresh lines in the shifting map of power. Tomorrow the next step upon the stair of the fallen would be taken, bearing 1,000 hopes aloft. Above Harrenhal's ruins, the stars burned sharp as forge-born sparks, watching, silent, eternal. Cold fog rolled off the god's eye before dawn, ghosting over Harrenhal's slag-black ramparts and softening broken towers into shapes of myth. Wind carried a whiff of marsh rot and wood smoke through the half-shattered windows of the Wailing Tower, where Robb Stark rose from a pallet strewn with maps instead of blankets. He had dozed there after the council broke, quill still clutched in his fist, ink smudged on his knuckles like dried blood. Outside, gray light seeped into the yard and found 30,000 men at half-wake, smiths hammering out dents, cooks stirring oat mash, drivers coaxing teams to draw loads of riverstones for the causeway south. The army's pulse beat slow and purposeful, yet an undercurrent of eagerness threaded every shout, every clang. Tomorrow they would march into lands the Lannisters had thought their own. Robb shrugged into a boiled leather tunic stiff with sweat and oil, clasped his wolf pelt mantle, and stepped onto the wall walk. Below, Grey Wind patted a restless circuit along the parapets, muzzle twitching at the dawn scents. Horses, tallow, fear. The dire wolf lifted luminous eyes to his master, acknowledging him with a low chuff that rose like smoke in the chill. Across the yard, bronze Jan Royce emerged from the sergeant's tower, arm cradled in a sling but back arrow straight. He held Robb with a gauntleted fist. Robb descended the stair to meet him, boots echoing across stone sprung and pitted since before either man was born. "The Lancers are ready," Royce said without preface, voice gravel roughened by last night's wounds. "Spirits high, blades sharp. I posted sentries along the western trails. No vulture will find us napping." Robb nodded, studying the old knight's lined face for a tremor that might betray weakness. He found none. "You should rest," he said nonetheless. Royce snorted. "Rest when the rock lies behind us. I dreamed last night of shields melted to gold slag. Thought it an omen that the Seven approve our quarry." His lips curved in something like humor. "Or perhaps the stranger's coin will fall our way. Either path suits." Caitlin joined them in mid-conversation, cloak fluttering like a river banner in the wind. She carried fresh parchment, sealed with a dire wolf pressed into soft black wax. "Lord Hoster commands your attention." The Riverlords had decided the Knight's Bridge along the Trident could be fortified in a day if enough laborers were seconded. The scroll detailed carts, axes, and levy counts. Robb skimmed the figures, mind ticking through riders and forage. "We can spare 400 axemen," he decided. "Send Lord Bracken 100 as well. He knows the marsh paths." When Cat nodded, he added, softer, "Tell Edmure to keep his pride close. Tywin will strike at embers if he cannot reach the fire." Her glance lingered on his face. "And yours?" "My pride." He attempted a smile. "I traded it for victory, the moment I bent knee to Lord Freytag Toll." Caitlyn's mouth tightened. "A promise of marriage is not an oath fulfilled. Lord Walder's memory is long. So must be my life," Robb answered. They parted, Cat toward the north rampart, Jan to the drill yard, leaving Robb alone with the castle ghosts, though he felt none. Harrenhal hummed now with purpose. The old ruin had become an armory, a granary, a forge, and above all, a signal flare. Tywin could no longer claim the trident. The Riverlands threatened to swallow him if he turned south. Yet if he fled west, he exposed Casterly Rock to siege. Robb descended to the yard, where Maester Vyman fed ravens from a sack of warm grain. Lord Karstark's outriders returned, the Maester said, wiping husks from his sleeve. They sighted smoke rising near Stony Sept, small folk burning fields to deny us fodder. Or to deny someone else, Robb murmured. Perhaps. They also report Boltons at the neck, but not at Moat Cailin. Lord Roose claims his levies march behind, slowed by sickness. Robb frowned. The flayed man never hurried unless a blade threatened his own throat. Dispatch a raven to Torrhen's Square, he said, though he doubted it would find loyal eyes now. If Lady Barbary Dustin still holds those lands, ask her what colors the Boltons fly. The Maester bowed. Paper ruffled like frightened birds' wings as he loaded the message tube. When sun crested the ashes of Harrenhal, the host spilled south in twin arteries. Robb led the vanguard. North pikemen screening Tully archers, banner of the direwolf rippling above steel-rimmed shields, painted with gray snarling faces. Behind them rumbled the baggage train, carts laden with flour, salt pork, ropes, forged nails, lengths of treated timber for bridge repair, and, hidden in one sealed cask, the iron crown of the kings in the north, which Robb refused to don until peace allowed him to wear a crown without sending men to their death. Bronze Yon's chosen 5,000 peeled off by midday, crossing a causeway flush with reed-brown water to shadow the King's Road. Royce trusted young Sir Michael Redfort with a wing of 2,000 light horse, bidding him ride east and hunt Lannister scouts. Lady Anya Waynwood herself commanded a shield wall of spears culled from the Coldwater Flats, their round shields white-painted with green sword moons. Catelyn rode with the main column, near the rear where the supply masters kept ledger and lance, side by side. She felt safer among numbers, safer for her son, but also closer to small folk, threads of rumor. Each village they passed spilled whisper. Of Lannister outrages, of a three-eyed crow in the Wolfswood, of dragons waking beyond the sunset sea. Fear bred stories, and stories bred fear. She listened and stored them like needles in cloth, for in war even wild tales pricked truth. Just past midday, a farm girl, no more than 10 summers, bolted from a hedge and paced Catelyn's horse, waving a bundle of blue winter roses. For the Queen of Wolves, she called, breath white in the chill. Guards moved to restrain her, but Cat halted them. She leaned and accepted the flowers, uncrushed though plucked too soon. The child's cheeks were smudged with soot. Her eyes shone when Cat pressed a copper star into her palm. "What is your name?" "Elsa," the girl whispered. "Elsa Mander. Where is your family, Elsa?" The child's gaze flitted to a smoldering ruin across the field. Catelyn followed it and saw blackened stones that might once have been a chimney. She swallowed hard. "Ride with us to the rear," she said, signaling a wagon driver. "You will help the healers. There is bread and soup aplenty." "Met." The girl nodded, eyes wet yet fierce. Catelyn tucked the roses in her saddlebags, letting their scent remind her of Winterfell's glass gardens under summer sun. 4 days later, the columns passed through the ruins of King Thorin's Holdfast, a settlement abandoned since the Dance of the Dragons. A permanent chill clung to the stone foundations, as if dragon flames still smoldered beneath. Here, Robb turned east toward the rolling hills above the Blackwater Rush. Spring rains had swollen the river until it frothed against willow-choked banks. Scouts reported the royal ferry forts lightly manned. Cersei had recalled garrisons to strengthen King's Landing now that Tyrell sails adorned Blackwater Bay. Robb called a halt at dusk atop a ridge where wild thyme scented the air. Bronze Yon rejoined him under banners, muting to silhouettes against a blood-pink sky. Royce's lancers had harried a gold cloak patrol, slaying 2 score and driving the rest inside the city walls. His men also captured a hunched peddler carrying letters bearing the Tyrell rose and Lannister lion twined. The letter spoke of an impending royal betrothal, King Joffrey to Lady Margaery. "What say you?" Robb asked, passing the parchment to Catelyn. She scanned the elegant hand. A rose's thorns pierce softer than a lion's, she mused. Cersei seeks allies she can manipulate. Tywin's absence forces her to welcome Highgarden's treasure. Bronzion grunted. Better for us. Tyrells will guard their bridegroom, not the roads. If Joffrey is wed come Moon's turn, half the realm will toast peace, while we carve its heart. Robb turned to the flickering fires below, each a star fallen to earth. Peace bought with lies is tinder waiting for spark. We must be that spark, but not before our steel is set. Vale quartermasters erected a command tent, trimmed in Arryn blue and Stark gray. Inside, candles guttered within copper bowls, throwing lines of light across the broad river map. Sir Brynden Tully arrived mud-spattered from the east, leading a company of outriders who had tasted crossbow quarrels at the city's north gate. His report confirmed Cersei's desperation. Walls bustling with masons, barrels of Greek fire lifted via cranes onto parapets. The Tyrell fleet chained itself to the royal harbor like swans penned by reed rope. Beautiful, but flightless. 50 war galleys from the arbor anchored deeper, their captains eager but idle. Robb traced the Blackwater's looping bends, recalling Maester Luwin's lessons. Tides, mudflats, prevailing winds out of Shipbreaker Bay. To assault the city by river invited fire and drowning both. A siege by land, though, might choke the capital before winter. Yet winter crept from the north. Already the nights bit with unseasonable frost. Bronzion, Robb said finally. How fare your men on forage? Full bellies for now, Royce replied. Villages this side of the Rush had stores untouched. Lannisters feared to cross water. But march us too long without resupply and hunger will unsheathe darker blades than any lion. Robb nodded. Then we must make the lion bleed quickly. Tomorrow we build false camps along the Roserad. Let Cersei think we intend a direct assault. Meanwhile you, my lord, lead half the Vale host west under cover of night. Circle to the river's south. Seize the storm road near Wendwater Bridge. Sever the city's grain from Storm's End. They surrendered. Royce's eyebrows rose. Bold, if executed. It must be. Robb turned to Brynden. Blackfish, ride north with Mallister's light horse, sweep the roads behind us. No messenger reaches Casterly Rock. He stabbed a finger at the map. If Tywin suspects a feint he will hurry east. We mean to lure him still. Send decoy riders with stolen banners down the King's Road toward Duskendale. Let them boast of numbers we have. The Blackfish's grin spread like cracks in ice. A chessboard of phantoms. I like it. The Wednesday. The night deepened. Each flicker of candlelight casting longer shadows across the tent's canvas walls. Outside, thunder muttered over the sea. Inside, Robb weighed more than roots. He imagined Sansa beyond those walls, glimpsing his banners from a tower barred by iron, yearning. Imagined Arya somewhere in the skein of dark, blade in hand. Every strategy bent around that unseen gravity. Two sisters alive and waiting. He would not break them upon the wheel of war. If he must wear a Frey bride to buy a bridge, he would bargain fresh pillows of mercy for his sisters. Catelyn read his thoughts across the table. Her voice dropped. When we press the capital, we must offer terms. The release of hostages in exchange for ceasefire. Cersei cherishes her children. We must remind her ours live and bleed. Robb's jaw worked. A queen who brandishes heads as gifts remembers little of mercy. Then remind her of fear. Cat's eyes hardened. And remind the Tyrells that a queen regent who lets a Stark girl die may find her gardens watered with weeping Northmen for a generation. Bronzion tapped knuckle on the map. Politics tomorrow, my lady. Tonight, we sharpen swords. Neptune. Sansa Stark stared across moonlit courtyards from the Tower of the Hand, watching clouds drift like tattered sails above the city. Bells had rung all day to celebrate the betrothal of King and Rose, every clang a nail hammered into her chest. Twice Joffrey had forced her to kneel beside him on the dais, while he boasted of sowing wolf pups. Yet in each cheer she heard only undercurrents of unease. Peasants distrusting rich Highgarden lords, rich merchants fearing Zeeg, gold cloaks glancing at walls where barrels of wildfire sat like dozing dragons. A gentle knock at her door broke the quiet. Sir Dantos slipped inside, breath smelling of wine but his eyes sober. "Fly a little bird," he whispered. "Your brother camps less than a day's ride from the rush. My friend smuggled word by pigeon coil. They say his host blackens every hill." He pressed a small brass brooch into her palm. A filigreed falcon perched upon a wolf. "Wear this when the sun rises. It is the signal to eyes within the city that you are to be protected." Sansa's fingers trembled. "I have no defenders here," she breathed. "You have more than you know." Dantos glanced over his shoulder, sweat beading. "Cersei seeks to send you south to Sunspear as token of trust to the Martells. She fears you a reminder of northern wrath." Sansa swallowed dread. "When?" "Soon. Perhaps at sunrise." He squeezed her shoulder. "Be ready to run. Doors open where birds fly." Then he vanished, leaving the chamber dim save for the moonlit brooch, winking in Sansa's palm. She pressed it against her heart and whispered Robb's name to the night. Along the storm road, Bronze Yon's detachment rode under a cloak of cloud that smothered stars. Hooves sank into damp loam. Branches slapped helms. They traveled silent, each mile a stolen heartbeat. Dawn painted the horizon sickly gray as they drew near Wendwater Bridge. A Lannister-manned earthwork guarded the crossing, torch beacons sputtering atop flaxen-painted shields. Roy signaled halt. His scouts, stone-faced Arryn men cloaked in woodland browns, slipped into ferns, re-emerging before suncrest with report. 30 men-at-arms, half asleep, cheval de frise, only half drawn across the plank road. Royce barked orders in a whisper. One horn moaned, low and mournful. 5 dozen Vale archers rose from mist-wreathed banks, loosed a single volley. Torches winked out. Men toppled like felled saplings. One warhorn squealed once, abruptly strangled. By the time Royce's bronze riders poured across, the garrison lay dead or fled. Within an hour, the bridge stood in flames, black smoke gusting toward the capital. Royce left 200 pikes to guard the ashes, another 100 archers in the pines with drums to signal approach. Then he wheeled south to fell further crossings. Across 20 leagues, villages woke to columns of smoke and tales of falcon knights riding like spirits. Grain destined for King's Landing was seized, cartwheels smashed, draft oxen driven north. Small folk surrendered willingly. Better feed wolves than lions. The news reached the Red Keep by Raven before midday. Cersei ripped a message so violently she slit her own finger. Blood dribbled across green silk gown. Maester Pycelle fussed until she slapped him away. "Tell Sir Osmond to wall the storm gate," she snarled, "and fetch Qyburn. My remedies will come from him now." Joffrey whined about ruined feasts, demanding a hunt to demonstrate courage. Cersei ordered him to his lessons with Lord Rosby. The boy cursed her for a craven, then flinched when she raised her unbloodied hand. He went, sullen, but the exchange left the court buzzing. Cracks, as Varys said, growing wide. Tywin Lannister bent over a field table inside an alehouse commandeered west of Ashford. His armored column clogged the Roserad, thousands of wheels grinding dust into mud as autumn rain set in. Ravens kept him abreast. Harrenhal fallen. The mountain dead, Wendwater disrupted. Each parchment tightened his scowl. He dispatched Sir Kevan ahead to raise the brooms of Maidenpool. Sent swift riders to rally those Freys not holding bridges. Promised lordships to any reach bannermen who would pivot north. Yet every summons begged time, and time was the one coin Tywin lacked. At dusk, Sir Forley Prester arrived with a captured courier. A hedge knight bearing forged Baratheon seals. Under questioning, the man admitted to carrying messages between Storm's End and Robb Stark. Promises of safe passage for garrisoned men if they rose against the Lannisters. Tywin's mind whirred. Stannis Baratheon's ghost still haunted the march. The Stormlands could roar again if fed new heart. He turned his gaze to the rock in far distance. Unseen but felt, like ore pulsing in the hills. "Send ravens to the Iron Bank of Bravos," he commanded a scribe. "Extend credit enough to hire every unsullied company from Astapor to Meereen." The scribe gaped. Tywin slammed fist to wood. No. At Harrenhal, Robb's war machine ground forward. Ziga smiths recast broken breastplates into spearheads. Leather workers stitched winter cloaks from harvested wolf pelts. Riverrun boys learned to string longbows until fingers bled. Nightly, ravens drifted from spy posts. Tywin still west, Cersei fortifying, Royce cutting roads. One raven bore heavier words. Moat Cailin had fallen to a swift assault. The Dreadfort's sigil flew above its central tower. Theon Greyjoy's murder repaid in like. The North's gate gone. Robb read the scroll thrice, each time his pulse pounding louder. He felt the stare of corpses shift beneath him. One step cracking. Bolton treachery, or filial mischance. The message named no commander. Survivors claimed flayed banners, but some swore a kraken sigil glimpsed in torchlight. Chaos wove north. He summoned Roose Bolton at once. The Pale Lord entered the command tower with lantern in hand, stoic as ever. "A tragedy," he offered when Robb finished. "Sickness thinned my men at the neck. Perhaps Ironborn saw weakness." Robb's gaze held him like steel clamps. "Your sigil flew above the gate." "I do not command every man who bears my colors," Bolton said mildly. "Some stray." Gray wind prowled behind him, growl rumbling. Bolton's eyes slid to the beast, unreadable. "Send me north with fresh troops," he proposed. "Let me prove loyalty by reclaiming the pass." Catelyn, present by candle's edge, caught the subtle eagerness in his tone. "We have need of every sword here." Robb weighed. "A courier rides to Galbart Glover tonight. He will raise Deepwood's levies against Moat Cailin. You remain, my lord." Bolton bowed, lips thinning. Later, as dawn's first muted glow seeped into the tower, Robb confided to his mother. "He lies like a still pond. One cannot see depth." Cats answer, then cast stones and watch what ripples. 3 days after, Royce burned Wendwater Bridge. The first starving refugees drifted into Robb's eastern camp. Small folk from Hayford and Sow's Horn, thin as reeds. Speaking of city ration lines, where bread loaves shrank to 2 hands, and riots stirred in the alleys of Flea Bottom, Robb ordered kitchens to feed them. In return they carried whispered messages back. A promise that food would flow plentiful if gates opened to northern lords. One refugee, a tanner named Megget, carried a scrap of parchment, sewn into his bodice. The note bore a single phrase: "The lavender cloaked stands with wolves," signed with a sigil of crossed feathers. Symbol of Varys. Robb puzzled until Cat suggested lavender might denote the Tyrells, whose cloak sometimes dyed such, or a certain master of whispers fond of sweet scents. When the note reached Bronze Jan, he chuckled. "Spiders and roses both prick," he said, "but a rose pricks softer." Inside the great sept of Baelor, Cersei met with High Septon Pyrrhus to bless the coming royal wedding. Incense fog coiled between marble pillars. Colored light bled through the rose window. The Queen Regent's green-gold gown whispered across tiles as she paced. "The realm bleeds," she told the fat priest, "and your faith must bind it." The High Septon, sweating beneath crystal crown, agreed, trembling. Yet his eyes lingered on the cracks lacing the sept's dome. Earthquakes had weakened it seasons ago. He wondered aloud if perhaps such celebration might tempt the father's judgment. Cersei's smile cut. "Judgment honors the victorious. See to it we stand victorious." Outside, Marguerite Tyrell's litter arrived, borne by 6 reached knights in silver ivy filigree. The city's inhabitants lined the street, half to cheer, half to gape at her embroidered train of blooming roses that left perfume in her wake to mask the reek of tanneries. But as she stepped down, she overheard whispers. "They say the young wolf's direwolf stands taller than a horse, and Lady Stark once rode here in similar silk. How now? Her father's head rotted on the walls." Marguerite kept smiling, yet in her mind she counted ships and quartermasters. Roses could wither if frost fell sudden. Later that night, she conferred with her grandmother Olenna in a fragrant courtyard. The Queen of Thorns perched on a marble bench, fingers stripping petals from an unlucky tulip. "Boy King's crown sits crooked," she said. "Lioness Mother nips anyone who tries to straighten it. If winter wolves howl outside, we must decide whether to bolt door or open for trade." "Grandmother," Margaery answered. Opening to wolves ends in blood, or begins new alliances. Olenna smiled, like she might bite the tulip stem. Keep your ears sharp. A she-wolf once crossed Rose Road and tamed Stormlands. At dusk on the 12th day of encampment, Robb's engineers completed a line of earthen perimeters within longbow shot of the city's north wall. They raised pennons openly, daring the gold cloaks to sally. None did. King's Landing's defenders preferred mortar and cauldron. The north erected false watchtowers stuffed with straw dummies in mailed shirts, stolen from butchered Lannisters. Each night they lit braziers, banging shields, while the real host withdrew 2 miles to new trenches. The game unnerved the walls. Archers spent arrows on scarecrows. Wildfire pots hissed into empty camps. Inside the mud gate, Sansa watched from a garret window. The horizon flickered orange where torches ringed phantom tents. She pressed finger to glass, tracing patterns, hoping one corresponded to Robb's banner, unseen beyond. Her maid Shay, because the Lannisters still held Tyrion's former paramour in household service, whispered that small folk believed ghosts marched. Men who died at Red Fork now risen for vengeance. Sansa smiled wanly. Her ghosts marched indeed, but they were living men. A clang at the door signaled Ser Meryn. Sansa hid the brooch. Shay smoothed skirts. The Kingsguard entered grim, informing that Sansa must accompany the Queen tomorrow to the Great Sept. She would carry Margaery's train as token of friendship. Wear something radiant, he leered. She bowed, heart hammering. A public appearance might reveal her to friendly eyes, or to arrows. Dantos returned that evening, breathless. 8th day, when bells toll for Joffrey's fast. Slip from the 3rd procession arch. A stable boy named Tom will wait with a pie cart. Hide beneath sacks of oats. He'll wheel you to the hay gate. There a boat on the river. His hands shook. Do not fail, little bird, or the axe falls on us both. Sansa's pulse roared like storm tides. And my sister, she whispered. Still no sign, Dantos confessed. But if one Stark girl escapes, others may follow. Switching vantage, Arya Stark crouched in the undercroft of a burned mill 2 leagues north of King's Landing, clutching a stolen dagger as Brotherhood without Banner's companion slept. Thoros snored. Angie cleaned arrows. Outside, the sky roiled with wildfire glow. Arya had spent weeks with them, chasing rumors of the Hound, the Mountain, her kill list long as her arm. But now she clung to news that her brother's banners flew near. She considered slipping away at dawn to seek the camps, yet fear gnawed. What if they turned her back as imposter? She fingered the coin Jaqen had given her, weighing faces unseen like a blind girl sorting beads. Gendry woke, noticing her restless glance. Dream of wolves tonight? He asked. I never stopped. She muttered. I mean to find them. Then we cross the rush tomorrow, he said, yawning. Arya's jaw set. Tomorrow kept moving and never arrived. Morning's first bird call found Robb Stark inside a command pavilion thick with steamy breath and straw, conferring with Maester Vyman and Lord Jason Mallister. Word from Royce. The Storm Road lay in ruins, barley fields burned, garrison fleeing. Word from the Blackfish, the Rose Red behind Tywin choked by contrived floods, dance cut by Northmen cunning. All avenues to King's Landing now bled. Then we tighten, Robb concluded. Tonight we push siege lines to the city's very walls. Towers disguised as lumber wagons. Catapults drawn at dusk when their lookouts tire. Catelyn, observing, touched his sleeve. Segan invites plague, and hunger invites surrender, he replied quietly. She nodded, though the phantom weight of dead children pressed her shoulders. Content to let him bear kingship, she resolved to bear hope. At sunset, rams disguised as woodcutter carts rolled forward. Lannister archers jeered, letting them approach within a stone's throw before loosing a token volley. When the first shaft struck a cart's side, carpenters flung tarps to reveal oak-ribbed giants. Signal horns brayed, shields locked. Archers advanced in staggered lines. Wildfire jars shattered among them, spraying green flame. Men shrieked, flailing. Others dropped cloaks to smother fire. Yet the towers pushed on, iron-shod wheels crunching bone char, embedded in field. Behind, catapults twanged boulders into the outer parapets. Bricks exploded like hives, sending honey-thin mortar raining down. On the walls, Cersei watched from a balcony, teeth bared. "Signal the chain," she hissed. A runner sprinted to the river gate. Moments later, iron links thicker than a man's thigh ground upward from water, closing Blackwater Bay to retreat. Bronze Jan, hidden south across the river, smiled when he saw the chain rise. It meant no fleet could ferry grain inside, nor men out. He dispatched riders to cut the massy lands east, ensuring no fresh stores slipped overland. Inside the city, chaos brewed. Gold cloaks forced small folk from rooftops to fight fires. Wildfire barrels stored near Flea Bottom sparked, unleashing hellish green fountains. Rumor of plague spread faster than flame. Beggars prayed to the Father, mothers screamed for bread. In the Red Keep's yard, Sansa knelt before Margaery, adjusting the rose embroidery on her gown, but her eyes fixed on smoke plumes beyond the city walls. Bells rang midday. Dread thickened. She recalled Danto's instruction. Third arch, pie cart, sacks. But Sir Meryn's armored hand clamped her shoulder. "Stay with the Queen," he growled. Plan crumbled like soot. Yet as the procession neared the Great Sept's western doors, a ruckus erupted ahead. A firework barrel, contraband from a Tyroshi mage, had ignited, scattering crowd and guard alike. In the confusion, Sansa slipped sideways, weaving beneath billowing cloaks. She glimpsed lavender Tyrell banners gyring in panic, smelt burnt sugar. Spotting the third arch, she darted, only to collide with Prince Tommen, who stumbled, eyes wide. She caught his hand to steady him, ignoring guards shouting. "Run to your mother," she urged softly. She ran too, skirts hiked, heart jittering. She found the pie cart, donkey braying amid stampeding pilgrims. Tom, the promised stable boy, waved frantic. She scrambled under flour sacks, heart banging. Tom heaved a barrel on top, sealing her into darkness that smelled of apples and grain. The cart lurched. Outside, she heard curses, bells, hooves. Each bump threatened to spill her into daylight, yet she clung to a wooden beam, reciting Winterfell gods' names like beads. The cart rattled down sloping streets, turns and jolts passing like sluggish heartbeats. Eventually it halted. She heard water slap hulls. Tom hissed, "Quick!" Sansa emerged, dizzy, to see a rust-eaten fishing skiff moored below the hay gate. Two cloaked figures awaited. One lean, one stooped. They bundled her aboard, and the skiff shoved into churning water dotted with drift ash and burnt corpses. As city walls receded, Sansa pressed cloak to mouth, stifling sob. Terror, relief, cold air lashing like whips. River current dragged them north along the rush's opposite bank, past leprous willows, past tents of strangers, toward a camp whose banners she prayed would welcome her. Word of a Stark girl's flight reached Cersei by sunset. She smashed a goblet against Tyrion's old desk, wine speckling her cheeks. "Find her," she screamed at Varys, who bowed serenely, promising webs. Inwardly he smiled. Spiders consumed wasps when the hive weakens. Night deepened. On a hillside north of the city, Robb stood with Galbart Glover and Roose Bolton at a forward observation ridge. The capital flickered green where pockets of wildfire still burned. Gatehouses glowed orange from torches, but arrow fire had slowed. The defenders numbered fewer than rumor claimed. A sentry horn sounded thrice, unfamiliar. Robb's heart tightened. He saw lanterns bobbing at river edge. A slender skiff drifted toward shore under white rag of truce. His guards readied bows. He signaled hold. The boat grounded. Figures emerged. One cloaked, slender, guided by an older man. When the cloak fell back, he saw auburn hair caught by moonlight. Grey Wind's ears pricked. The direwolf whined, then howled recognition. "Sansa," Robb breathed, legs propelling him down the slope before sense could catch. He splashed knee-deep into water, seizing her from mud. For a breath, the world shrank to 2 heartbeats. Hers quaked fast, his thunder-slow arms around trembling shoulders. She sobbed into his padded collar, words incomprehensible. Robb lifted her face. She bore bruises, but eyes blazed stark gray. Behind them, the older guide bowed. Sir Dantos hollered, drunk yet earnest, and collapsed to knees, spent. Catelyn arrived moments later, cloak flying. She enfolded daughter and son in a triad of salt and mud. Guards formed ring, bows scanning darkness. Yet for one perfect heartbeat, war retreated. The stare of corpses paused to bless reunion. Bronzion reached the ridge, breath frosting. The enemy loses a hostage, he murmured, eyes lingering on the scene. And Yane's despair. Sansa's rescue punched a hole in the city's morale. Rumor plastered streets that wolves could swim walls. The gods favored the north. Wildfire would burst within the Red Keep next. Tyrell envoys demanded assurances. Margaery wept prettily, while Olenna sharpened her tongue. A lost hostage suggests lost war. Even Pycelle stammered of negotiating. Cersei clutched Joffrey's head to breast, nails digging his scalp while he whimpered. She forbade any talk of surrender. Yet she ordered ravens to her father, return east with all speed or the realm is lost. The raven flew south toward Tywin's encampment by Torchlit Road, only to be intercepted at dawn by Blackfish riders disguised as tollkeepers. The message never reached the lion. Within Robb's tent, Sansa recounted horrors. Her father's death, Joffrey's cruelty, the queen's venom. She spoke of Arya, last seen disguised among servants, but missing since before Yoren's departure. She spoke of rumors that the Hound roamed the Kingswood, that Tyrion once shielded her but now gone to exile. Each detail struck like arrow shafts in Robb's chest. Catelyn soothed her daughter's trembling hands. When Sansa finished, exhaustion doused her. Maester Veemon offered milk of the poppy. She declined. "I want to dream true dreams," she whispered. Robb personally escorted her to a tent warmed by braziers, posted direwolf guard together with Vale sentries. Later, he convened the captains. With one hostage free, Joffrey loses half his leverage. Arya remains, but our hand strengthens. He turned to Bolton. Send riders to the city under banner of truce. Offer exchange. The city's surrender for safe conduct of its people, the king's abdication in favor of Tommen. And Arya returned as ward. If refused, we breach. Bolton inclined head, though a flicker of something unreadable crossed his pale eyes. Bronzion asked, "And if Tywin appears behind us?" "We turn and shatter him on our own chosen ground," Robb said. "We've choked his roads, bled his forage. His line stretches thin. Lo." He looked around the table. Glover, Mormont, Mallister, Waynwood. Faces lined with fear and hope. "The gods have given us this hour," he said, voice low. "We must prove worthy." Across the Seven Kingdoms, ravens leapt from towers as autumn winds sharpened. In the Reach, Randall Tarley drilled men for a war, no longer his. In Sunspear, Prince Doran read of North and Vale, and Wade Dornish read vengeance. In the Vale, Lysa Arryn clutched her son, safe in Ares Eyrie, and prayed her knights would not fall. Beyond the narrow sea, a dragon queen heard stories of a young wolf, and wondered at kinship. In the haunted north, Ramsay Snow approached Winterfell's smoking gates under false flayed banners repainted as Stark. Theon Greyjoy's charred corpse hung from battlements beside two boys' bodies burned beyond witness. Ramsay smiled beneath stolen helm. Winter wolves busy in the south left northern dens unguarded. And in King's Landing, wildfire barrels sweated in cellars, green hearts pulsing beneath worn stone floors as whispers skittered. "Will the queen burn us all before wolves break the gate?" Robb Stark stood at edge of camp, watching dawn kindle clouds into streaks of copper. Somewhere within tents, his sister slept at last, but trouble no longer bowed her shoulders. Hope had seeded. Robb lifted Warhorn to lips and blew a single note. Low. Steady, resolute. Responses echoed across hills, bronze trumpets of the Vale, ululating war cries of mountain clans, hoarse roars of northern men. Ziga towers creaked into motion. Catapults ratcheted. Drums pounded heartbeat rhythm. Wolves howled. Falcons screamed unseen circles overhead. The stare of the fallen waited. Robb placed boot upon the next rise, gripping sword hilt warm from sunrise. The world tipped toward reckoning. He climbed,